At the end of the day, which had turned out nicely, Drew helped Kylie get her things and get on the bus. "Thanks, are you coming on too?" Kylie asked, turning around before he got on the school bus. "Oh no, not today. I think I'll walk home," Drew said nervously and smiled. "Bye," Kylie then said, smiling as she got on the bus, pulling away as Drew watched until it turned the corner and it was no longer visible. The sun was near its way to be setting, and Drew wished that he did take the bus, but he didn't because he didn't want Kylie to feel like he was attaching himself to her 24/7. Some birds flew over him as he looked up, and enjoyed the feeling of the warmth of the beating sun. Crossing the street as he looked both ways, and halfway across the street, a large silver car came up with 4 boys in it, and they were laughing horribly loud. Stopping at the red light, one of the boys pulled out his icy and threw it towards Drew. Turning around at the wrong moment, the cold purple icy hit his face and went everywhere. "Nice one, Buster!" one of the boys roared with delight as they drove off laughing. Drew was mortified. He felt like he was going to cry. He was upset because he was wearing his new outfit, and these bullies that he didn't know ruined it. They also were made him angrier, and Buster was Alan Dentor's cousin. Drew was now sticky from head to toe and knew that his mother wasn't going to be happy about this. Not that it was Buster who did it. She wasn't going to be happy because she spent $55 on his new outfit and it was now ruined. Looking down and picking up his wet books, Drew tried to hurry home as fast as he could. "Mom, I'm home!" Drew screamed at the top of his lungs because he wanted attention. "Hello, dear, I'm in the laundry room," Abby said, poking her head out from one of the rooms down the hall. Drew slugged down the hall and dropped his books down in front of her. "And what in God's name happened to you?" Abby said, surprised, raising both eyebrows. "Buster Dentor and some of his friends, I guess, threw a purple icy at me when I was walking home," Drew said, looking up at her. Abby took a rag and wetted it and knelt down and wiping away the hard sticky stuff all over his face. "Stand still," Abby said, as Drew let out a deep breath and started to wiggle because he was annoyed. "You're moody. Now go get something to eat now," Abby said, taking off his shirt and throwing it in the washer. Drew sighed and made himself a sandwich. Whenever Drew was moody, it was because he was hungry, or when he was hungry, he didn't talk to anyone or got sick in the bathroom. "I hate my life!" he roared, slamming the refrigerator door. "Don't say that," Abby yelled back as he ran upstairs with his sandwich in hand. Slamming his door, he gulped down his sandwich and he walked into the little tile-like bathroom. Taking off his pants and underwear, he stood in front of it and looked in the mirror, having a huge rush of coldness swept under his body and as he rubbed his arms for some warmth. He then turned on the water and took off his glasses, stepped into the rushing warm waterfall. "I love taking showers," Drew thought, as he ruffled his hair and got it wet. Looking around, everything was fuzzy. He got his shampoo and poured it into his hair. Drew's whole beaten little body started to relax as each hot drop of water fell onto it. Weeks went by and Kylie and Drew became friends. She sat next to him for months and protected him when the bullies would be mean and cruel to him. "Leave him alone," Kylie said, standing in front of Drew one day at the playground. Alan and his gang had come up and started to throw sharp stones at Drew, who was trying to read a science book in peace. "Excuse us, Miss Kylie. We don't want to hurt you. We want to teach that little piece of trash a lesson." Alan then growled and reaching out his hand. When Drew heard those words, he whimpered and held on to Kylie in fright. "Leave him alone, you bully," Kylie said, grabbing Alan's hand and twisting it fiercely. "Ah!" Alan yelped in pain and jumped back, narrowing the beady silver eyes at Kylie, who stood strong and proud for hurting him. "Who gave you permission to touch me?" he asked, holding his limp hand. "The power of free will, Alan. Now go, before I hurt you, until your whole body is sore," she said, taking a step forward. But Drew was still grabbing onto the back of her shirt, enjoying every moment of it. "Man, she smells nice," he then thought in a dreamy mood. Alan then shook his head in frustration, and ran off and didn't even bother for neither of them for the rest of the day. Are you okay? Kylie then asked as she stared at Drew, who was now clinging onto the front of her shirt, and then let go, feeling ashamed of himself. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you for saving my life, Kylie. Oh, it's all right. Hey, that's what I do, Kylie said, laughing and admiring herself. Well, my work here is done. I'm gonna go hang out with the rockers. Okay, bye, Kylie then said. She ran off to three boys who were playing with their guitars as they brought out the recess to play with them. Drew then looked around sadly and wished she would stop running off from him all the time so they could spend some fun time together. Well, at least I don't get my butt kicked every day by Alan thanks to her, Drew then thought, and sighed as he took his big science book under his arms and went to sit under a tree. Finally, after a whole year of school, Drew and Kylie had become best friends thanks to Alan. Actually, every time he tried to hurt Drew, Kylie would come running to his rescue. One day at recess, they spent the whole time together. Hey Kylie, want to come over to my house sometime? Drew then asked nervously, looking deep into her kind eyes. Sure, when can I come? She asked. Did she just say yes? Drew thought, as he felt a huge rush of excitement followed through his body. And this is the kind he never felt before. He really liked her, and he thought this was the best day of his life. Want to come over this Friday? Drew then asked. Sounds good to me, Kylie said. With that, she slowly slipped her hand into his, and they both smiled nervously and walked home into the sunset. And then Drew remembered when he said to his mom, I hate my life. And he was so wrong. Shigo, I'm home, Draken said, as he took off Commodore Puddle's leash, and he flew into the kitchen to get some ice water from his little dish. Hey, were you up here? If you needed us, Shigo said, bellowing down from the stairs and walking back into Miss Lipsky's room. Draken made the little Puddles a snack when he went down to his office to clean up. Looking nervously at his desk, he sat down in the swivel chair and opened the drawer. Where did this come from? Draken asked himself out loud as he studied the scroll carefully. It was very old, or what looked to be an old as a disguise or something. What do these markings mean? Drew said, then thought frustrated. Draken, Shigo said suddenly, knocking on his door. Draken nearly jumped out of his blue skin as he spoke. Shigo, I told you 1,000,000 times not to sneak up on me, he said, a bit annoyed. I wasn't sneaking, Shigo then said, appalled. Okay, fine, anyway. How are you doing? He asked, a little bit nicer as she walked in and looked around. You know you really should clean up this place a bit, Shigo said, running her finger along the front of his desk, and looking to see if there was dust, which there was. Well, I'm sorry, I'll try to clean it up, Draken then said, tilting his head and folding his arms. What's that? Shigo then noticed the small scroll in his left hand. Oh, I found this earlier, Shigo, Draken then said, as he opened it and shoved it to her. Well, this seems to be very old. Where did you find it? Shigo then asked Draken, curiously sitting on his desk. Behind the bookcase. Apparently little Commodore Puddles found it first. I guess he picked up the smell, Draken said, as Shigo unscrolled the scroll, and her eyes were shocked upon the writing. I know this writing, Shigo said as her mouth went dry. You do? Draken asked in surprise, yet curious. Yeah, or at least I think I do. My dad would use this language when I was too little to translate things. Why would he do that? Draken asked. I don't know. My dad never really told me what he did for a living. All I know is that when I would go with him or with my brothers, he would say, I'm going to a meeting, and if I never come home, run as far away as you can, Shigo said, scanning the paper some more. Well, maybe I can ask my brothers what this means. They might remember, Shigo said, rolling it back up. Or maybe it has something to do with the house. Or maybe it's the will of people who lived here, Draken said, standing up and taking his seat, as if he suddenly become smart and had a brilliant idea. Right, Shigo said, playing around. How is Mom? What were you guys doing up there anyway? Oh, just looking at baby pictures of you, Shigo said, smiling, knowing he was going to get mad. What? Wait, What pictures did she show you? Draken said, trying not to laugh. Oh, all of them. The ones she kept in her wallet. Shigo then started to laugh real hard. Draken slugged back into his swivel chair and put on a scowl. Stop being a baby. You were adorable when you were born. Now I'm going to call my brothers. I'll be around if you need me, Shigo said as she left him in the quiet room peacefully. Sitting back and thinking like a madman, Draken didn't move because he was so engrossed in his thoughts. I wonder whatever happened to the house. So many memories. Oh God, and then there was Kylie. I'll never forget that day, Draken thought to himself as he stood up and cleaned up the room a bit. Thinking about the scroll really puzzled Shigo. She knew that writing. It was that scaring her. It has been so long since she's seen that kind of writing before. It looked like a mix of Chinese and French combined. Maybe it's some Native American language? Shigo thought as she entered the kitchen and dialed her brother's phone number. A few hours from where Draken and Shigo lived, someone was stalking them. Little did they know this girl would bring the real truth that was hidden of both their lives. Stepping out of the drugstore stood Hazel Eyes. Her light brown hair was pulled back into a lost ponytail as she was wearing loose clothes. A light red shirt she had wore appeared to be a faded Gap cargo pants like khakis. The breeze in her face felt quite nice, but she enjoyed it as when she was hotter out and she could get a tan. Looking around, then tossing the streets where she could be her bag and pulled out a map. Sitting on the bench, she crossed the street and opened her map and her eyes davished around it. All right, if I'm here, where would they be? The young girl thought as she ran her finger across the trail. Then, she looking up from her map, her eyes became evil and her face became twisted. With that, she said, "Perfect," and then got up and started walking downhill. Shigo dialed her brother's number and then waited for an answer. "Hello?" A small voice came on. "Hey, Wego 1, it's Shigo," she said, hoping that she found her right brother. "Hi, Shigo. Oh, it's actually Wego 2. Wego 1 is sleeping. He's really sick," Wego 2 said. "Oh, is he alright?" Shigo said, a little concerned, because usually her brothers didn't get sick. "Anyway, he's fine. Why are you calling?" "Oh, that's a nice way to talk to your sister," Shigo said, smiling, but only jokingly. "Sorry, Shigo. How are you?" Wego 2 said, laughing. "I'm pretty good. I was wondering if maybe I could talk to Higo if he's around," she said. "Yeah, just a sec. Higo, it's for you," Wego 2 said, yelling in the room. "Who is it?" a deep voice said, away from the receiver. "Here just to go talk." "Hello?" finally a deep voice said. "Higo, hi, it's Shigo," Shigo said uncomfortably. "Hey sis, how are you doing?" "Oh, I've been doing good. How have you been?" Shigo asked, sitting down in the living room with the cordless phone in her hand, glued to her ear. "Great, actually. Avarius hasn't escaped in a while, and that's just been a good thing. But a little more Wego 1 apparently has a really bad cold. I don't know, we might have just taken him to the hospital." "Oh no, I hope he's okay." "Did you say that you hope your very own brother's okay?" Higo said, laughing. "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" Shigo asked, getting her snippy tone back. "Well, it's not just you, but I like the way you've been so far. Maybe getting married was a good thing," Higo said, sitting down on a squishy chair in his lair. "Yeah, I know what you mean. I have changed, but that's not why I called," Shigo said, getting down to business. Higo laughed and as he paid attention. "I called you because Draken and I discovered something earlier. Apparently he was in his office with our dog, Commodore Puddles, looked behind the bookcase and then got his attention." And, Shigo said, annoyed, "he found a scroll." This hadn't had Higo's attention. "A scroll?" he asked curiously. Check this out. The writings on this scroll. I've seen them before, and I'm not saying this writing is in Japanese or Latin. This writing has a secret code," Shigo said, her voice now tense. Nor did she have never had heard a voice this tense before, and she was starting to scare herself. Then there was a long quiet silence between the two of them. Shigo would only hear Higo's breaths a little now and then. "Wow. Well, how do you recognize these writings?" he asked her. When we were little, all I remember is that when I see them, I think of Dad when I was little. He would use this language, I think, to translate things, Shigo said. Oh man, Shigo, I don't know what to say. Well, I was wondering if you could maybe come check them out and see if we find anything, Shigo asked Higo. Sure. When do you want a hookup? How is tomorrow? Shigo asked politely. Tomorrow's alright, but I'll have to see how Wego 1 is doing. Hey sis, I have to run. I think he's calling me. Why don't you come over around noon? Is that better? Higo then asked in a hurried tone, because he needed to get to his sick brother. Oh, that's great. Talk to you then. Bye, Shigo then said, clicking off the phone and hanging it up. Down still in his office, Draken had finally managed to clean up a little. Knocking on the door, Shigo was surprised that he didn't jump. I just called my brothers. Hello, dear, how are they doing? Draken asked, coming up from under his desk. He was picking up some papers. Oh, they're fine. Watch your head, Shigo said. Just then Draken bumped his head and yelled. Shigo couldn't help but laugh as he sat in with a scowl on his face, rubbing his head. Thanks, he muttered, standing up. They're good. I'm gonna go see them tomorrow, and you could come too if you like. Higo and Migo are probably there to inspect the scroll, and to see if they remember anything about it. That sounds like a good plan. Hello, Puddles, Draken said, as his little happy dog rushed into the room and walked over to the bookcase. Scratching his little claws, he drawled Draken and Shigo's attention, and they slowly walked over and pulled them back. What's wrong with him? Shigo asked, holding him and fluffing the pink poof on his little head. I think he wants to show us something, Draken said, pulling out the bookcase and then staring at the hole. When the dog saw the hole, he jumped from Shigo's arms and flew towards it. Kneeling down, Commodore Puddles sniffed in the small hole that was actually a good size for him to get it through, but it would be risky. Even if they forced him into the hole to look up something, he would get frightened and run away. I think there's something else in there, Draken said, looking in and waving his head around in the flash of light, flipping it on after Shigo gave him one he checked out. I do think there's definitely something else in here, Draken then said, sitting on his knees. So how do you think we can get it out? Shigo asked, taking a peek as well. Well, if Commodore Puddles won't do it, the dog had already ran away. When Draken said his name, then I have only one choice, Draken said, looking up at Shigo with a worried face. At first she didn't quite understand what he was saying, until he narrowed his eyes. No, and no. You're not going back as a child just to see if you could fit in that stupid hole, Shigo said, putting her hands on her hips. Okay, then you can do it, Shigo said, standing up. Excuse me, who's the pregnant one here? Shigo asked, not noticing that he was only joking. Shigo, I'm just kidding. Now, if you want to help me find out what's really else in that hole in their wall, I have to change my body. Don't worry, I did it before, he said, holding her face in his hands and looking deeply into her eyes. Yes, but the last time you did go back and change your body, you almost gave me a heart attack. And I didn't want that, and can't you see you get hurt again like that, Drew? She then said in an almost a whisper. Draken then leaned down and kissed her sweetly. Shigo cared about Draken so much, even though they were totally different people. When him seeing go back to his little body as a child, it really frightened Shigo from what had happened. Just because he did it wasn't normal. But when he was a mad scientist, and what mad scientists do, mess with nature. Slowly breaking the kiss, they both felt a strong power between them, and they both knew everything was going to be alright. Then kissing Shigo's forehead and patted her on the arm, and left the room to get the only thing that would take him back in time, and that was the formula. Little did they know, but this time, he wouldn't be coming back so soon. Draken had went down to his lab and make sure that he wanted to do this before he did, just in case he changed his mind at the last minute. Shrugging his shoulders, he then walked over to the little frig and took out a small tub with purple, black, and blue swirls swimming in the dark, dangerous liquid. What would Mother think? Draken said. He thought of staring at the bottle. She will never know. He then holding his nose and quickly drinking the nasty liquid. Dropping the beaker, hearing it smash on the cold, solid ground beneath him, Draken then suddenly held his stomach in pain. His face was going pale, and almost everything around him was spinning. Come on, just hurry up, please. Then at the thought of his body started to shake slightly and felt more fiercely. Then the pain came out as dreaded the most. It was the painful part of the process. Letting out a wail of pain, he started to feel his stomach inside being torn apart, what felt like hooks. Then, passing out for a minute or two, Draken was on his stomach and he was cold. He blinked his eyes for a few minutes and then sat on his knees. Yes, it worked, Draken said to himself as he looked down and realized that he was back in his body that he was in when he went to preschool. Rubbing his arms to keep himself warm, he saw a pair of clothes were magically placed on his chair to where near he was sitting and ran up to them on. Shigo had stayed in the room and braced herself for what he would come back to as a baby. She had been thinking about her baby for a while. What if it wasn't a girl, or what if it was a boy? And what would it be like to be a mother? From birth to preschool, and from preschool to college. Shigo then let out a deep breath and felt her lower stomach. Every day the baby was getting bigger, and she would very happy but nervous. What if there was going to be something wrong with the baby? Or what if it died? Shigo couldn't think of it anymore. She felt like she was going to cry. God couldn't and wouldn't do that for her and Draken. Draken then, after getting dressed, cautiously walked out of the door and ran down the hallway very quietly. He was acting this way because he didn't want his mother to see him back in his old body when he was little. One thing is for sure that she didn't know is a mad scientist, and the second thing is that what if Abby saw Drew this way? At her age, she'd probably have a heart attack. Shigo, can I come in? Said a small voice on the doorway. Shigo jumped from her skin when she heard the little voice. Draken, is that you? She asked, looking his way. Yes, can I come in? Yeah, why can't you? She asked, and he walked in and looked up at her. I didn't know if my mom was in the room or not, but besides, I don't want you to scream, he said, smiling evilly and laughing. Shigo raised one eyebrow and laughed. I wouldn't scream, she said defensively. Sure, Draken said jokingly with her around. Go see if you can get in the hole. Maybe you can get stuck, Shigo said. Wow, you're a really nice mood today, dear, he said, shaking his head. Don't call me dear in that body. Why not, he asked. Because it's not right. Well, it just feels weird for a preschooler to call a 20-year-old woman a dear, Shigo said, shivering and sitting down. Okay, I'm just trying to be nice. How about this hole? Yes, I could probably fit in this little hole, Draken then said, getting on his knees. He was a bit frightened about if it would collapse on him, or he would get really stuck. Starting to crawl in, Shigo told him to be careful, to which he was. It's so dark. Lend me a flashlight, he instructed, sticking out his little pale hand with tiny fingers moving wildly. After getting it from Shigo, he flipped it on and screamed as a little mouse ran in front of him. I can't stand mice, he fought, crawling for some more. Do you see anything? Shigo asked in a distant voice. Not at the moment, he said, looking around some more. I can tell you one thing. We better call someone here soon because we have a lot of mice in our walls, Draken said nervously as one started to come near him. After searching some more and more and through what felt like a tunnel of wasted years and a tunnel of sadness, Draken felt like giving up until something caught his eye. Come back if you don't find anything soon. Please, this is freaking me out, Shigo said on her knees and calling him through the hole. Okay, yeah, here I come. His voice did trail off as his flashlight ran over something he at least didn't expect to find. Hello, Earth to Draken, Shigo's voice called at the entrance of the hole. His eyes were fixated on something that was scaring him. His face was pale and his mouth was hanging open a bit. Focusing on the light what he found, he reached out the small hand and ran his little fingers on the wall. What are you doing? Come out. You're starting to scare me. Shigo winced as he started to crawl in herself, but got stuck. What Draken had found was special unknown writing on the wall. What is this? He thought as he traced it with his fingers. Wait, I know where I have seen this before. Draken thought quickly, turning around. Shigo threw me the scroll. I think I found something, he said anxiously, as he rolled it down the rough door to him. Then the opening scroll quickly and keeping the flashlight steady on as he scanned with his beady eyes. I think I found something, he said in an excited voice. Which would it be? Shigo asked, crawling out of the vent. We might need to cut this piece of wall out, he said, looking at it once more, and realizing what the words on the wall were the same as from the scroll he held in his hands, but the words on the wall were much more smaller font. Crawling back out, he looked up at Shigo, who was laughing when she saw him. What's so funny? He asked, narrowing his eyebrows, because he didn't like to be laughed at. Go to the mirror and look at yourself, Shigo, walking him to the bathroom, said, helping him stand on the marble sink, making sure that he didn't slip, and he saw his reflection. Draken's very black wavy hair was now dirty and gray. He had dust all over his face and his knees were cut up. No longer his skin was white pale, and it was the color of an old man's hair, the gray kind. Draken started to laugh, but winced when Shigo put him down because his knees were badly cut. Here, let me get a band-aid, Shigo said, sitting him down on his chair, and went back to the bathroom to get some medication. Maybe I should have never found the scroll. What if it was meant to bring brought back from the darkness? What if I disrupt history? He thought, with his mind pounding fiercely on his heart as well. Are you all right? Shigo then asked, getting on her knees in the dark brown bottle with one hand and band-aids on the other. Draken had his little head down and was rubbing his neck. Shigo then let out a deep breath. I guess so. Why? Oh, and what did you find back there? She asked. Well, when I was back there, I found the same writing that was on the scroll in the back of the wall. What? How could that be possible? She asked. I don't know. Something's wrong. I could feel it. And I don't think we found out the whole history behind this house. And maybe we heard. I think I was totally wrong, Draken said in a worried tone. There was a little silence for a moment until Shigo looked down and opened the brown bottle. Dabbing some of his cut-up legs, he growled at her in pain. Well, you know it's going to hurt, she said, closing the bottle and putting in some band-aids. If you want me to, I can do some research on these writings and then the history of his lair. But at first, I think it'd be much better if I talk to my brothers tomorrow. You're coming, aren't you? She asked. Well, yeah, if you really want me to. Yes, I do, Shigo said, laughing slightly, and walking out of his office. Oh, and Draken, change back to your normal self, because I don't know if you want your mother to find you like this, she then said, walking out of the bedroom. Draken jumped out of the chair and dusting himself straight off of his shirt, and pushed back the bookcase back with all of his might. The sun was starting to set and it was getting hungry for dinner. Plus tomorrow would be a big day for the both of them, since they were going into the little city to see Shigo's brothers. I'll be in the lab if you need me, Draken then called from the hall as Shigo as he entered his cold lab. Running over to the refrigerator and quickly opened the door, smiling and reaching for his left hand in, his mouth was dropped completely as he realized that the formula was to change him back until he was totally gone. Where did it go? He almost screamed as he took his left and was shocked. There were 3 glass beakers and they were broken on the floor and had a little doggy prints around them. Puddles, he growled through his teeth. I'm going to kill you when I get my hands on you. He almost screamed at the top and ran out of the room to tell Shigo. Abby, on the other hand, was upstairs getting ready for dinner. She decided to wear a dark blue dress and fixed her brown hair. Staring at the mirror, she missed Greg. If only if you were here to see your son, Greg. He misses you so much. Abby thought to herself as small tears welled up in her eyes. Then going to sit on her bed, as she stood up at the little tiny photo album she held in her purse, and pulled out the last picture she had of Greg. He was only in his early 30s when he died. In the picture, Greg was holding Drew in his arms, and they were outside of their house, and they were both laughing because they both came home from fishing, and Drew had the bigger fish, and Greg had a minnow on his book. Greg never meant to be mean to Abby, but when he did it, it was on purpose, or because he was drunk. Putting away the picture, Abby's heart started to hurt. Putting her hand on her chest, and she prayed that she'd be all right. She didn't have much a busy day. She just spent some time with Shigo, arranged her things. A calling voice called down to her on the first floor, and it was for her. "Ms. Lipsky, would you like to come down for dinner?" Shigo asked. "Oh, yes, dear, here I come," she then said, put her things away, and went downstairs. Little did she know that her son's body had gone back in time, but his soul was still the same. "Shigo, help me!" Draken screamed a little high-pitched girly scream as he flew into the kitchen panicking. "Draken, what is it? I thought I told you to turn back into your normal self," Shigo said, tapping one foot. "That's the problem. Commodore Puddles just got in the fridge, my lab, and broke the last vial of the potion to change me back," he said in a pleading voice. Shigo scowled and dropped, and her face was droopy. "He did what?" she almost screamed. "Yeah, I know. I'm going to kill that little pooch when I see him next," Draken said, rolling back his eyes sarcastically. Just then Shigo thought of something. Abby was coming down for dinner, and she wasn't supposed to see little Draken like this. He was supposed to be back to his normal adult body. "What about your mother?" Shigo then quickly, hearing her walk down the stairs. "Oh gosh, you're right. Hide me," he then said nervously. Taking Draken under the arms like a baby, she hurried over out of the kitchen just as Abby entered to see where everyone went. "Where are you taking me?" he whispered, afraid of what she was going to do to him. "You're going in the closet if that's okay," she asked. "But I'm hungry," he whined, starting to kick. "You kick me and you hurt me, and then you hurt our baby," Shigo said, glaring at him. "All right, hide me," Draken said, screaming, as he saw Abby's shadow come out of the kitchen. "Where is everyone?" she asked herself. She looked around and could not be seen by everyone. Setting Draken down, she left the door cracked open, and Draken sat alone. He didn't like this, but he would reveal himself sooner or later. Turning around, Shigo walked back into the kitchen nervously. "Hello, Abby, why don't you have some dinner?" Shigo asked, leaving little Draken all alone in the closet. Finally, it was Friday, and Drew was very nervous. He got all dressed up, and Abby kept telling him that he was going to play outside and wasn't going to a wedding. "But Mom, I want to look nice for Kylie," he insisted. "I know you do, and you always look nice. But I thought you might want to go show her the horses, and wouldn't rather be up a t-shirt and shorts and tie and a black coat and pants," she said, smiling. Drew then looked into the mirror and smiled. "Okay, I'll go change," he said, as he hurried back upstairs to his bedroom. Drew was so nervous to have Kylie Paris over. I mean, she was like one of the most popular kids at school. And well, he wasn't. Putting his regular clothes on, he decided to wear his black shirt with that skull on it. "Maybe if I wear this, she might think I'm cool like one of the rockers," Drew thought, as he slipped it over his little head and put on shorts. Running over to the mirror, he ruffled his fixed hair and glasses. "Drew, she will be here any minute. Please come down," Abby yelled from the foot of the stairs, and he hurried off into his room and slid down the banister. "Your father taught you that, didn't he?" Abby said, raising one eyebrow at him. Smiling happily, he nodded up and down and jumped off. "Why does the kitchen smell like fire?" Drew asked as he stopped dead in his tracks and looked around. Just then, as Abby walked in, a huge blast of fire and smoke burned off something of their yard. Abby screamed and pulled Drew down, and so they were safe. "What the hell was that?" he asked. "Don't use that word. I don't know," Abby said in fear, as she looked around cautiously. It wasn't until they heard Greg said a bad word, and Abby knew it was just Greg doing experiments out in the field. "Dad," Drew said happily, not knowing his dad was home. He got up and ran out in the back to see his father. Abby, on the other hand, stood and dusted herself off. So close, she thought, as she smiled happily and watched her son running through the weeds to hug his dad. Into the kitchen, she decided to make some spaghetti for dinner that night. "Dad, you're home!" Drew cried happily, flying into his father's arms. "Hey, Drew, I thought you were having a friend over. Where is she?" Greg asked, hugging his son back. "Oh, Kylie, she isn't here yet. What are you working on?" Drew asked, distracted. "Oh, this?" Greg asked, nervously trying to hide it. "It's just a little something I'm making for work. It's for my boss," Draken said, showing him what it was. "What does it do?" "What it does is, you promise if I tell you what I've been keeping?" Greg said, kneeling down so he was the same height as his son. "Yeah, I promise," Drew said, nodding his head before. Well, follow me, Greg said, then looking around and taking him towards the back of the barn. Drew was a little confused about why his father was acting this way and where he was going. Some of the horses yelled and kicked their gates as they walked by, so they can get their attention. Where are you taking me, Daddy? He asked, but Greg didn't answer. Dragging him from behind the barn, Greg looked around nervously and bit his lower lip. He brushed away some leaves and dirt below him, and his son was a trapdoor. Cool, Drew whispered, knowing that his dad would get angry if he made such a noise. Greg knelt down and pulled the trapdoor open, and when Drew saw what was in the door, he almost fainted. Below them were 50 or more bars of solid gold. Dad, where did you get all that? Drew asked nervously and amazed at the shining gold. I can't tell you that now, but you must promise that you may not tell anyone else about this. Promise me. I promise, Drew said nervously, but meaning that he did. Now what I do with that machine and I have out there is I stick a bar of gold at the top and it melts it, and then we'll go to a molder, and the molder is designed to be a gold chain, and that is well I can tell you, Greg said, shutting the trapdoor and putting some dirt and leaves over it. And another thing, Drew, if I was ever to die of some sort, when you get older, all this gold would be you're okay with, Greg said, holding both of his hands tightly. Yeah, alright, thank you, Daddy. I don't want you to die, Drew said, as he hugged his dad tightly, and Greg held him in his arms. Don't worry, son. I'm not going to die for a long time. You don't have anything to worry about. Little did Greg knew, he was so wrong of what he just told his son. Setting little Drew back down, and they heard Abby call, because Kylie was here. Oh, Dad, I'll be back later. My friend is here, Drew said happily, as he ran back to this house to meet Kylie. She was at the front door and had golden blonde hair, looking to lost two braids. She was wearing a tank top and jean shorts. Hi, Kylie, Drew said happily, as he opened the door to greet her. Hi, this would be so much fun. Thanks for letting me come over, Kylie then said, and she did something that Drew thought would never happen. She hugged him close. His little eyes were wide, and she wrapped her arms around him, and he was frozen. She smiled, and she was so nice and was warm against his body. Plus, Drew felt a feeling that he never felt before in his life, and he had never been touched like this by a girl before, and everything was new. Breaking the hug, Kylie smiled at him and then saw Abby come in. Hello, you must be Kylie. Drew has talked a lot about you, Abby said, shaking hands with her. Drew was still frozen as both girls thought he was totally out of it. So, Abby then said, breaking the silence, Drew, honey, why don't you go show Miss Kylie here at the horses? Do you like the horses, Kylie? Abby asked. Oh yes, I love horses. They're so graceful and beautiful. They're my favorite animals. Come on, Drew, where's your barn? Kylie then said, taking his hand and walking outside with him. Coming back to life, he noticed her hands were touching again, and Drew really was enjoying this. I didn't know you like horses, he said as he started to walk around through the weeds with her. I do. I've always wanted a horse. It's just my mom doesn't think it's a good idea for me to have one. I guess it's because she's afraid of him herself, Kylie then said, laughing a bit. Well, you could come over any time and ride my horses if you like, Drew said, squeezing her hand more tightly and smiling at her. Kylie giggled and started to blush. Finally, they made it up to Drew's barn, and looking around, he saw his dad working on a machine with a pair of goggles on, and every now and then they would hear him scream a bad word because something didn't go right. Wow, your horses are beautiful, Kylie explained, as her big eyes turned to the shining crystals, as she noticed his horses in their stalls. Yeah, they look nice, but they can get moody, Drew then said jokingly. Taking her through the barn and showing her to everyone, she got lost in the fantasy. In Kylie's eyes, Drew wasn't the outcast or geek. He was sweet and kind and happy boy. Yet she was to be afraid to tell her feelings to him. Now that you've seen the whole family, would you like to ride one of them if you want to go riding? He asked. I would love to go riding with you, Kylie said, jumping for joy. Drew laughed a little bit and got out 2 saddles from the dusty old closet embedded in the barn. I'll take America because she will only let me and my mom ride. Plus, she's 13 now. But you couldn't have anyone else, Drew said, smiling. Who's that? Kylie asked for a moment, studying to each other. Oh, that's Catherine. She's 6 years old and is kind of a baby. But if you'd like to ride her, you can, Drew said, opening the gate to Catherine's stall. Catherine the horse was 6 years old and had hazel-colored eyes. Her mane was midnight black and her coat over her body was a color of deep coral. She stepped out of her own grace and started to lick Drew's face. Stop, Catherine, that's slimy, Drew said, laughing and smiling. Kylie laughed as the horse did. Kylie was obviously flirting with Drew. After half an hour or so, they both had their own horses, with their own gear and hard helmets upon their heads. So where would you like to go for a ride? Drew asked as he and America slowly walked out and waved up to his dad, who waved back. Oh, Drew, you know this land much better than me. I'll go anywhere you want, Kylie then said, kicking the horse to her side so she would keep up her pace. All right, there is a riverbank a few minutes over from here, if you'd like to go see that. Sure, Kylie said happily as she caught up with them. The sun was shining that day and the birds were singing. Both children were very social, and the more Drew talked with Kylie, the less he got scared of being with her. Thank you for sticking up for me at school. I really appreciate it, Kylie, Drew said, blushing. Oh, I don't mention it, and you don't deserve to be treated in that any way. No one else does. I hate that Alan Dentor. He is such a pain in the butt, Kylie spat, and Drew laughed to hear her say that. I prefer rockers and much more over him. Guess what, she said, urging him on. What? Alan actually asked me to go to the movies with him, the romantic type movie, Kylie said, annoyed. And I told them there was a day no way I was going with him. And the way they treat you? Heck no, Kylie then said, her face getting a little red. Drew was blushing because he didn't take the eyes off of her delicate beauty face. Man, I love her, he then thought, as she looked up at him and smiled. What? Nothing. So anyway, the creek should be up there, Drew said, pointing to the small waterfall that was ahead of him. Wow, that's so beautiful, she exclaimed as she came up and got off of her horse. There was a waterfall and a small little pond. Everything was so peaceful, and Kylie and Drew spotted a baby fox drinking from the pond as well. Isn't it nice? He asked, putting their hands into his pockets nervously. Oh, Drew, it's wonderful, she said, her eyes shining more brightly now. American and Catherine decided to get some water from the lake as well, as the children sat down and watched. They both talked a little until Kylie started to get really nervous about something. Something wrong? She asked, suddenly interrupting him and standing up. Kylie's face was then chalk white and her eyes seemed to be bloodshot. Kylie, what's wrong? You're scaring me, Drew said, starting to back away. Something's wrong. My dad, we have to go home, she said, in a very upset, disturbed voice, as she jumped on Catherine and kicked her hard to the side, making her yelp and run out of the meadow at full speed, scaring the little fox away as when he seen Kylie's reaction as well. Wait! Drew yelled behind her as she jumped on American and galloped after her. Kylie's hair was blowing fiercely in the wind and her eyes were all watery. Drew and America were catching up, but she didn't care. What's wrong? She asked and quickly looked at her, as if they were both in a horse race. My dad, I could feel it. There's something wrong, she said almost in a yell, with the horse in the barn and jumped off. Catherine, who is not used to be ridden so fast, lied down in the green crisp of grass to rest. Drew then jumped off America and she did the same. He ran after Kylie, who was on her knees crying fiercely. Kylie, what's wrong? Drew whispered as he put his little hand on her shoulder. And when she did, she flinched in fear. My dad! There's something wrong! I have to go home! She wailed, standing up and running back to this house. Drew followed her and she almost fell. Drew would catch up to her and she would hold on to him for support. Hello, kids. Have a nice time riding? Abby asked as they both came in. Kylie, dear, what is it? Abby asked in a worried tone, and she saw that she was in tears. Thank you for a wonderful time, Miss Lipsky, but I have to go home now, she wailed, and with that she ran out the door. And that was the last time Drew has ever seen Kylie happy again. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video. And I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.